So what we're going to do is we're going to basically try to summarize the HR scoped application that ServiceNow came out with. So I'm going to talk about HR case and knowledge, and sort of the unique things that go with that. It's actually a little more complicated than people think. A lot of times they're like, oh, how complicated can it be? Why isn't it just like an incident, right? Or like a request item. The next thing I want to try to show, so I'm going to show you guys the components of the document management and sort of show you guys how you can take a document like a PDF and then take that apart and turn it into objects in ServiceNow. And then you can use it kind of like a staging table to have documents that are in a case be transformed into records, or the other way around. It's kind of interesting how that works. And then Todd is going to jump into the portal. Todd's got some magic skills when it comes to portal development, and he's looked through he's going to go through some of the nuances and the unique differences that are presented when we're looking at the HR side of things, especially the difference between the HR portal, the older one, and the newer one that just came out. I believe it came out, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it came out in Madrid, and now it's really been overhauled in New York. The ESC, Employee Service, is it Center, I hope? Yeah, Employee Service Center. So he's going to talk about that. So you'll see, for those of you who do know the HR application in more detail, you'll see that I'm probably skipping over some things, but I'm doing that purposely because I don't want people to get too confused, because I'm going to throw a lot of stuff at you guys at once. And so what I'm trying to do is summarize and show you some of the more unique differences between what most of you, all of you veterans that have been in ServiceNow for a while, especially in ITSM, the things that you've seen in sort of, like the standard task forms, the differences in the HR scoped application. I'm just going to show that to you guys. So I'm going to try to keep it simple. The first thing I want to talk about is the plugins, and I'm actually going to have sort of a nice, neat list, and I'm going to break it down. But the first and most important thing is the plugins, and that's something that I think a lot of people get hung up on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and go to our plugins and show you guys a couple of things that a lot of people get confused about. So we're looking at our plugins. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see more real estate here. If I type in human, you'll see that I have Human Resources Scoped App Core. In some versions of ServiceNow, you'll actually see that there's two different human resources applications. It's imperative that you know the difference. If you see two, that means that the version that they're using has access to the old non-scoped version. There's a huge difference between the two, and once you turn one on and then turn the other one on, you run into some issues with configuration. So you want to make sure that you get this one right here. What you want to look for right here is this ID, com.sn_hr_core. That is the main scope of the HR application. So if you don't see that, don't install it, whatever you do. Okay, so that's the first thing. The next thing I wanted to point out is that there's a lot more plugins that come with this than you might think, right? So if we look at this guy, you can see that it's got a lot going on in it, right? 6,500, files that come with it. That's a pretty healthy scoped application. But also we have several different ones that come along with it that have to do with different components. So for example, leave of absence, that's in and of itself, that's its own plugin. As you go down, you'll see that they are all paid. So that's one thing that a lot of people don't know about the application, is that the more things you turn on, the more it costs the client. So remember that. It can go up in price quite a bit, in fact. I'm not going to get into that, and you guys all know that the pricing is what it is, right? It changes, and so trying to stay on top of it's difficult for us developer type folks. But these are some of the ones that I wanted to point out. So we got the scoped app security comes with it. This is something that I am gonna open the hood on this to show you guys that the security in the scoped application is incredibly bulletproof. And I ran into an issue at a client, and we were trying to hack into it to try to solve some problems, and we just flat out couldn't do it. And so I can tell you with certainty that it's very difficult to crack the HR scoped app security. All right, so that's enough about plugins. Let's see here. The next thing on my list that I want to show is the guided setup. So if you type in HR up here, once you have the plugin turned on and you scroll down here to HR case management, you'll see getting started. If we click that, most of you guys are aware that when you're doing an implementation, there's a lot of stuff that helps you get through the implementation. I just wanted you guys to know about that. You can click on that. There's also, if you type in guided setup, there's a really nice guided setup that comes with it under HR administration. I'm not going to go through this, but basically, if you were going to do a new implementation, I would recommend, at the very least, go into your own personal dev instance and run through this and just get familiar with it. If you take the certification exam for the implementation cert, they talk about this a little bit. Definitely, try to use this as much as you can, but there are obviously certain things that you can't get when you do the guided setup. But there is a lot that actually you can get through as far as like when you're going through the workshops and things like that. This can be very helpful for you. Cut down on some time for development. Okay, so jumping in, once you turn on the plugin, the first thing that I want people to know is, how does it work? How does the admin work? Because a lot of times people will do it and then they just they can see the HR application, right? All this stuff will appear. Well, how does that happen? That's the question I get all the time. How does it know? And so what I want to do is I want to show you guys the roles and how that works. So if you go into roles and you go into the admin role, when you turn on the plugin, one of the things that happens is under the contains roles, you'll see that it added all these to our admin role. So that basically says that anybody that had admin in this instance, when the plugin was flipped on, now should have all these roles. So that's one way to make sure that everybody can get to this stuff and they can turn it on and they can work in it. Now, in the implementation documentation, it specifically says that once you're live and once you have turned everything on, there's actually a step in here to remove this from the contains roles so that only people that have HR admin when it's live can keep it, because it's imperative that you know the difference. Once you have actual data in your case management table, in all the different case tables, the security becomes very relevant. And the people that are HR admins, only they should be able to see that data. You don't even want system admins to be able to see it. That's a big selling point for this application. And that was one of the reasons that they had a hard time in the beginning getting it out to clients, because they couldn't separate the data, but now they can. So I'm gonna kind of breeze past it, but in the end, I just want you to know that that's how you get admin. And this is actually where you would remove it once you're live. Okay, so let's talk about the groups. So if we go into our HR groups, when you turn on the plugin, you get these groups that come out of box. They all roll up to a parent called HR. And without getting into the nitty-gritty details, there's benefits. These groups are basically the assignment groups. But these groups here, HR tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, these actually contain the roles, the security roles, to allow folks to access certain types of cases. All right. HR 1, tier 1 is usually your generic call center, depending on the size of the organization. That's just all of the HR agents across the platform, across the organization. Tier 2, these are people that are more highly specialized. Like you might have people that are really good at payroll or really good at dental benefits and medical benefits, right? Or one of them that's really good at 401k. You can specify that in these tier 2. And then tier 3 is when you go up to, you're talking about the HR managers, possibly HR admins, where they have the technical ability to go into systems and check things that these other guys can't, right? Once we have that sorted out, then you can talk about how to reassign to specific groups and have very specific people. It just kind of depends on the size of the organization. A lot of times clients will ask me to change the names of these, and that's fine. But I just like to tell them that if they can change the way they operate and they can fill these groups with people, they'll probably just be better off keeping the naming convention. Skills. So let's talk about HR skills. HR service delivery heavily utilizes skills. And you guys will see that when we start looking at the cases. On any given case, you can actually just flip on a skill, and then anybody that has any of these skills will be able to look at that case. So that's how that works. I won't spend a lot of time on this because I'm sure most of you know how that works. All right, so now what I want to do is I actually want to show you guys some of the more important properties. So I'm going to jump into the HR properties. So these are all the ones that come with it when you flip it on. The one that I like to show people that kind of shocks them is this guy right here. Impersonate check. What does this thing do? So basically, if it's false, you can impersonate anybody. But if it's true, ACLs will actually work as they should, even though you're impersonating the person. So what do I mean by that? Okay, let's go impersonate somebody. I'm actually going to impersonate Able Tutor here. And then we're going to go to our HR case table. Scroll down here to all. He can see everything, right? But now I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to flip that property to true. So when we flip this property to true and I flip back to able, check out what happens. I'm going to go back to our HR case table, click on all, number of rows removed for security constraints. So basically this is saying that now it's actually checking the ACLs, and because able doesn't have the ability to see these cases for whatever reason, and there's actually a lot of reasons, and I'm going to show you that soon, he's not able to see these cases. So it's basically saying that in production, if an administrator tries to impersonate somebody, even if they do, you want to have this thing set to true in production. You can have it set to false down in dev and test, but definitely want to have this turned on in prod, because again, you do not want system administrators to be able to see data in those case tables. There could be sensitive information in there. Okay, so that's something that a lot of people, when they see that, they just didn't know about it. So let's go in here. I'm going to flip this actually back to false. All right. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you guys is the difference between sys user records and HR profile records. You got a lot of questions about this, and people are often going, why don't we just use sys user? Well, I'm going to show you guys. So if we go to our, if we just go to our user table, you guys have all seen user records, right? There's basically all the components we need to know who's who and to know how to get a hold of them. We got their email address, right? Their phone number, just basic information. Well, when you flip to the human resources profile, watch this. This is their HR profile. There's a lot more information in here. And this comes in from the integration, however they bring it in usually. Usually it's Workday, PeopleSoft. I've had clients use Oracle Identity Manager sometimes. But yeah, primarily it's Workday and PeopleSoft. But yeah, we have more information, and you'll see here that the user is being referenced, right? So it's tied to that. Why is it tied to the user record? Well, if you can imagine, we have these HR profile records in here. If they don't have a user record, well, they can't even log into the system, right? So if they have SSO enabled, that won't work. Because if there's an HR profile and no user record, there's none of that. The ACLs can't be, the roles can't be assigned to the HR profile. It has to be assigned to the user record. So you just have to have a pair between the two. And for every given sys user record, there should be an HR profile, barring any, NUIDs or, system integration IDs that might be used. Also notice here we have social security number. Most clients that I've implemented at, they do not use this. Some of them actually want the last four though. And they use that for things like setting up pins and things in different, like 401k systems. Like if you use Fidelity, if the company uses Fidelity for their staff to look at their 401k, they may need that last four digits to automatically hook into it when they pass them, when they redirect them, and they can do that. the idea behind this, the reason I wanted to show you guys this is because if they did have the last 4 social in there, again, we do not want the system admins to be able to see these records. The only people that could see these records would be the person themselves, or someone with HR admin, or somebody with, there's another role below that specific, I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but there's another role that you can give that allows them to see HR profiles. The idea is that you want to make sure it's segmented away from the rest of the platform. All right, the next thing I wanted to show you guys is how do we generate these HR profiles? So there's a lot of ways you can do it. Usually the client has an integration with Workday, like I mentioned. Another way is to go to the user record itself, find somebody, and I actually created a record. So I created this user record just for fun. And down here, you'll see we have a UI action called Create Human Resources Profile. So we can do that sort of ad hoc if we want. And that's just kind of however the organization wants it set up. And so if we do this, what happens is we click it, and now it brings us to that newly created HR profile. And so now Jean-Luc Picard can log in because he's got a, it's his user record. And now he has an HR profile record. So now if I go into create a new case, now I can actually see Jean-Luc Picard. Right? You wouldn't have been able to see him had you not done that. Okay. The other way to generate HR profiles is to literally type generate. This will actually generate anybody in the whole platform from the sysuser table. So if we click this, it gives us a condition, the condition builder. And you'll see right here, it's saying profiles to be created 59. Based on what it's seeing right here, the condition that I've given it, only 59 users will be created, or profiles will be created. So you can simplify that. You can narrow it down if you want. So again, if you have a bunch of NUIDs in there in the sysuser table that you don't want to have HR profiles, then you would go ahead and find a way to filter those out. But once you do this and you have your filter narrowed down and you hit create profiles, it will create the whole bulk of them. So a lot of times what clients do when we're going live in production, we have this as a step in the release or the go live day where we narrow it down to what we want, and then we create the profiles, and then we turn the integration on to sort of complement the already created profiles, because this is the quickest way to create them. The other thing that you want to do, the one thing that this can't do in some versions of this application, you weren't able to create HR profiles if the active is false, but you can actually do that now. So let's talk about cases and talk about the differences in COEs. So one of the things that is very different about the HR application is COEs. So if you look at an incident, right? Let's go to an incident.form. We have category, subcategory, right? Pretty straightforward. We've all used this everybody's kind of comfortable with that. Well, in cases, let's go take a look at a case. There's a little bit of a difference there. I'm just going to open up any one of them here so I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, so you see that we have HR service, but that's really all we have. That's the only categorization we see. Well, what if I wanted to change that? The answer is you actually cannot change the service once the case has been created. And this is why. If you look here in the URL, you'll see that we have SN HR core case talent management is the table that this record is on. Okay, so this is where a lot of people start getting confused, and they're like, why is that? Shouldn't it just be HR case? Well, here's the deal. If we go into our COEs, a COE, Center of Excellence, is actually a table. And that's how this works. So that's the very top. ServiceNow gave us this nice little slide to help us understand. So the Centers of Excellence is the top. That's the main biggest part of it. That's the table itself. Then we have the topic categories that can be, to narrow it down a little more. And then we have the topic details that narrow it even more. And then we have the actual service itself. So what does that look like in ServiceNow? What we see is that this COE, so this is actually a table, and I dot list this table. This is all the cases on that table, and they all have their own. So when we're talking about COEs, that's what that means. And that's why it's so difficult to change the HR service once you've created it, because the COE maps to a topic category. So now if we go to the topic categories, you'll notice that they have their own names, and you can change these, right? So you can have as many as you want. You can change the labels, but in the end, they all roll up to a COE so that we know what table they come from. And this happened, the reason that they have it this way is it has a lot to do with sort of the security side of things. And it also has to do with reporting and metrics. Topic details. So this is the next stage down. You'll see that this is the name of the topic details, and you see that it rolls up to a category. So we start to get a little more granular, right? And this gives us the ability to turn them on and off, these different types of topic details. And then last but not least, we have the HR services themselves. And so I am gonna start speeding it up. This is where I wanted to spend most of my time, but I'm gonna kind of breeze through a service. So when you're looking at the stack, the important thing to remember, guys, is COE is the top, topic categories is second down, then topic details, and then your HR service. So don't get hung up on the categorization, and it's best if you're in a situation where you're talking to a client about this stuff, you have to make sure you understand that, because it might get you in trouble when they want to change it. When they see a case and it's like, oh, this case was created incorrectly, we want to move it. The answer is you actually can't do that easily. You actually have to transfer the case. And I am going to briefly show you guys that just so you know where it's at. So if you come in here, we're looking at a case. Let's say they decided that this is not a drug screen and it was accidentally made. We can come up here and do transfer case. And when you do that, it asks you which service do you want to turn it to, right? So maybe it was a let's see, maybe it was a dental enrollment instead, and hit OK. So then it will create a case and it will actually relate them. See, so it's got a parent that it came from. So that's how you do that. And now we're in a completely different table with a completely different case, completely different metrics are involved, whole different assignment groups and templates and all that. So now let's get into the services really quickly. And I know I'm skipping over a lot of stuff for those of you who know HR, but hopefully this will be helpful for folks. So service active is true. This is where you can deactivate a service. You have the name, you have the value that can be referenced by code. You have a badge, don't worry about that. The fulfillment type, this is important. So you have manual service activity, you have the workflow, you have lifecycle events, you have advanced, and you have flow. So you can obviously you can reference these from flows too. These are the different ways you can fulfill them. The majority of them are set to manual because that means that the people that are assigned the case, the HR folks, they will decide whether it moves or doesn't move and what state it's in. Topic detail, that's where you assign the topic detail. Topic category, can't change that because it's based on the COE. And then let's see, so showcase the subject person. This is a really important one to remember. So think of cases like corrective action. If somebody did something bad at work and they're going to get a case against them for corrective action, we obviously do not want them to get notified that the case was created, right? So that's where you would say you would have this marked false, showcase the subject person, and by default it is set to false because you don't want them to see it. Now if you check this though, all the notifications that come out of box will send this person, the subject person, an email saying, hey, the case was created, right? Automatically move attachments. I believe this is once they've created the case has been closed, you can automatically have the attachments moved into document management. Okay, templates. This one's important too. It works very much like you would think. Basically, you can come in here, you can create a template. The majority of them, you're just setting the short description. So when the case comes in and it's created, you're gonna automatically create a short description. But this is also where you can get into assignment rules and things like that. And then you can always come down here and just add any of the fields you want to automatically write to that case after it's been created. Case options. This is actually another really important one. There's a script include that runs off of all the case tables, and it checks these case options. And these case options do some pretty interesting things. So for example, at the end, when you're looking at a case that's about to be completed, if it's like, if it's in progress or if it's ready and they're working it and the agent decides to close it, well, behind the scenes, what actually happens is it goes into a waiting acceptance and sends an email to the subject person and says, hey, David Self just finished your case. He did the thing that you asked him to do. Was it done to your satisfaction, yes or no? If they say no, then the case reopens. David gets an email saying, hey, this person needs help still, fix the problem. But you can avoid all that by using this. If you set it to skip automatic user acceptance state, you could just set it right here, and then the script include will figure that out behind the scenes, and then it won't do that. It'll just close the case, right? There's a couple other things like skipping auto assign. The auto assign, I'm sure most of you know this, but it'll scan an assignment group and make sure that if there's 5 people in the group, whoever has the least amount of cases assigned to them, they'll automatically get the case, right? You can skip that. And you can add as many of these as you want, right? And you can make as many of these as you want. HR criteria, this is for your audience to say who can see these records, who can use these records, how all that works. These 2 are very important. This is how you decide whether they can view things and how they view them in the portal. Okay, and then the last thing I wanted to show you guys really quickly was the checklist. So one of the neat things about a case is that you have this checklist, and I get asked constantly, hey Dave, can you change the checklist from a client script? The answer is yes, you can do that, but you're definitely going to be using DOM manipulation, so please don't do that. What this is a checklist, and you can create things yourself, like do a thing, do another thing, right? Go into Workday and fix their name, whatever the case may be. This is coming from the agent, maybe potentially passing this case off to another agent, and you're trying to give them a checklist that they can go through when they open this case and go to work it. But what you can do in the template is you can actually set the checklist to be this way every single time a case is created, this type of case. Very, very helpful, very useful. But remember, don't try to edit this and create these via script. I know you can do it, but it's just, you'll cause a lot of havoc if you try to do it that way.